Before this story begins, pause everything. Hit that subscribe button. Grab a box of tissues, because what you're about to hear isn't fiction, it's not a nightmare, it's my life, my pain, and my workery. My name is Samantha, and this is the story of the day I died. Except I didn't. I remember the pain. 17 hours into labor, the kind of agony that tears through your soul before it touches your body, like being ripped apart from the inside, piece by piece. My cries echoed against the sterile white walls of that delivery room, but no sound was louder than the silence of my husband. Andrew. He stood in the corner, not beside me, not comforting me, not even looking at me. He was scrolling through his phone. While I was screaming, gasping, fighting for my life and the life of our child, he was too busy replying to texts. That should have been the first alarm bell, but I blamed the stress, the fear. I didn't know that what came next would change everything. Suddenly, I felt something warm pool beneath me, too much warmth. The nurse's face turned pale. She didn't speak to me. She slammed the emergency button. Within seconds, the room was full, doctors shouting, nurses scrambling, machines beeping like my body had turned into a battleground. One voice cut through it all. She's hemorrhaging, we're losing her. And just like that, darkness. Blackness crept inward from the edges of my vision like a curtain being drawn across my life. The world dimmed, the beeping monitor flattened into a long, high-pitched scream, and still I clung, for my baby, for Andrew, for hope. And then I heard it. Not panic, not a plea, but Andrew's icy voice. Is the baby okay? Not my wife. Not please save her. Just the baby. Like I was already gone. That should have told me everything. They declared me dead at 3:47 a.m. I heard it. Not metaphorically, literally. I was still there. Trapped. My mind wide awake. My body utterly frozen. I heard a sheet being pulled over my face. I felt the cloth against my lips. I felt the gurney moving under me, the cold metal of the morgue table beneath my back. I heard the quiet hum of an old radio. I heard a man, the morgue technician, humming to himself like it was any other Tuesday. He moved beside me. I could feel him preparing whatever they do to a corpse. And God, I wanted to scream. I'm not dead. Please look at me. Please help me. But nothing happened, nothing moved. My body refused to respond. Then a miracle, or maybe a twist in the cruelness of fate. I heard him pause. His humming stopped. His fingers touched my wrist. Wait. He leaned closer. I think I feel a pulse. Silence. Then a flurry of motion, rushed voices, equipment wheels, alarms. And me still frozen, still screaming inside. Back in the ICU, I became a body on machines, but I wasn't in a peaceful coma. I was still conscious, aware, listening. A different doctor explained it to Andrew in a cool, clinical voice. Your wife is in what we call a locked-in state. Her brain still functions. There's a small chance consciousness is preserved, but motor function is completely non-responsive. What are the chances she'll recover? Andrew asked, his voice unsettlingly calm. 5% at best. And if she does? If there's no improvement in the next 30 days, then we can discuss life support discontinuation. Andrew didn't cry. Didn't beg. Didn't blink. Just said, I'll need to make some calls. That was when Margaret appeared. His mother, cold steel in human form. She'd always hated me, but now she saw a way out. So, she's a vegetable, she asked. We don't use that term, the doctor replied, clearly uncomfortable. Margaret pressed harder. After 30 days, we can end it. There would be a legal process if there's no change. 30 days, she repeated. That's manageable. And she walked out. Right past me. Past her daughter-in-law. Her grandson or granddaughter's mother. Like I was already in the ground. Then came voice number 3. Familiar. Sickening. Jennifer. Andrew's assistant. The one I'd suspected for months. The one who never looked me in the eye. She walked into the hallway with them while a baby monitor, accidentally left on, transmitted every poisoned word into my hospital room. This is actually perfect, Margaret said. Exactly, Jennifer whispered. She's practically dead. Andrew has the baby, the insurance payout is coming, and now I get to be the mother. Andrew shockingly hesitated, but she's still alive. Not for long, Margaret replied. 30 days, we pull the plug, no investigation, no liability, no mess. They laughed, they planned. While I lay in silence. My funeral. My replacement. My baby's new name. All chosen while I listened. By day 3, I learned I had a baby girl. Only they didn't call her Hope, the name I had picked. Margaret renamed her Madison. She blocked my parents from entering the hospital. Said they were too emotional. Too alive, maybe. Too close to the truth. And one nurse, bless her heart, whispered to another. Did you see that woman who keeps visiting, the Mistress? She's wearing lipstick and calling herself Mom, the real Mother S in a coma, and they've already replaced her. I was screaming inside. Screaming. But no one could hear me. And then on day 5, they told my parents I was dead. Coldly. Effortlessly. There'll be a closed casket, Margaret said over the phone. Cremation, just family, we appreciate your understanding. And I cried. God, I cried. And the nurse wiped my face with pity, assuming it was a reflex. But it was. It was grief. It was rage. It was the moment something inside me snapped. Because now I knew the war had started. I wish I could say my heart broke once, that my pain had a limit, but no, pain doesn't work like that. It lingers, it multiplies, it compounds every time someone speaks your name like you're already dead while you're still trapped inside your body, screaming silently. I was still alive, barely. But Andrew, he had already moved on. It was day 7 when I overheard the nurses talking. They were standing near my bed, checking my vitals, assuming I was asleep or brain dead, but I was listening. Every single word. Can you believe it? One of them whispered. His girlfriend moved into their house yesterday. They're throwing a welcome home baby party and the mother's still in a coma. She moved in, the second nurse sounded shocked. Seriously. Yeah, and you didn't hear it from me, but she wore Samantha's wedding ring to some baby group meeting. The other nurse gasped. What kind of people are these? It hasn't even been a week since the baby was born. What kind of people, indeed? They didn't just replace me. They erased me. I wasn't in a coma. I was a ghost haunting my own life, watching it unravel from a body that couldn't move. They renamed my daughter, repainted her nursery, donated my clothes, threw out my wedding photos, and slept in my bed warm from my memory, cold from their betrayal. Every inch of the life I built had been rebranded with Jennifer's name. She cooed over my baby, cooked in my kitchen, called herself Mommy to the daughter I'd grown, bled, and nearly died for. And they thought I'd never know. Then came the party. The final insult. I learned about it in whispers, scattered pieces from nurses who pitied me but had no idea I could hear. Margaret had sent my parents the wrong time and address. The event had been scheduled for 2:00 p.m. She told my mom it was at 5:00 p.m. in a private location that didn't exist. At 4:45, my parents arrived, confused and frantic, only to be stopped at security gates, watching strangers hold their granddaughter in a house that used to be home. My mom collapsed when she saw Jennifer holding my baby, introducing herself as Madison's mommy. My father demanded to speak with Andrew, but two hired guards shoved them off the property like criminals. "We're her grandparents," my dad shouted. "You were her grandparents," Margaret replied cruelly. "Now you have no rights here." My parents wept for a daughter they thought was dead. They paced outside the gates, refused to leave, demanded answers. But the only answer they got was silence. From inside that hospital room, I could hear it all, from nurses, from hallway gossip, from a baby monitor that one kind soul deliberately left on near my bedside. And I realized something horrifying. I wasn't just in a coma. I was witnessing my murder in slow motion. By day 14, the plan wasn't just to take my daughter. They wanted to take everything. One of the nurses, Claire, overheard Margaret having lunch with a sharply dressed woman in the hospital cafeteria. Her voice carried, clipped and controlling as always. "This policy covers how much again?" "$500,000, the woman replied. "The payout happens after we legally declare life support discontinued." "And that's after 30 days, Margaret asked. "Yes," provided no signs of recovery. Margaret smiled, actually smiled. "Perfect." But the worst twist was still to come. Day 20. The day I learned I had more to lose than I thought. A doctor I hadn't heard before, Dr. Martinez, entered the ICU. There was tension in his voice, nervousness even. He was speaking to Andrew just outside my door. The nurse left the baby monitor on again. And I listened. "Mr. Mitchell, there's a development you need to be aware of." "What now?" Andrew asked, sounding irritated. "I don't have time for complications." "Yes, well, it's about your wife's delivery. She didn't just have one baby, she delivered twins." The silence was thunderous. Andrew stammered, "What?" "Twin girls. The second was extremely premature and required intensive care. She's been in the NICU since birth. We've stabilized her, but we were waiting on you to authorize next steps, including naming her." "And why was I told?" Andrew snapped. The doctor hesitated. "You instructed the staff not to bother you unless there were emergencies. You requested to handle all communication through your attorney. You weren't reachable." Andrew didn't ask how the new baby was. He didn't ask if she was okay. He just asked who else knows. Within the hour, Margaret and Jennifer were on their way. I heard them all arguing just feet from where I lay, still and silent. "2 babies," Margaret growled. "This complicates everything." "People will start asking questions," Jennifer added. "1 baby is simple, you've paraded her around, but now there's a second one." "We can't explain this," Margaret muttered. "Where has she been? Why didn't we announce her together? It'll spark investigations, gossip, exposure." "So," Jennifer's voice was soft, almost hesitant, "what do we do?" Then came words that lit a wildfire in my chest. Margaret's voice turned colder than ever. "We get rid of her." Cliffhanger echoes. Get rid of WHO. Will they sell the child? Can a mother's tear bring divine justice? By that point, my heart monitor was racing. Alarms were blaring. Nurses came rushing in, and one noticed something. "My God," she whispered, her eyes, they're crying. But the other shook her head. Automatic response from the nervous system, nothing unusual. But she wasn't convinced. That nurse walked straight to her supervisor and said 5 words that changed everything. "I think she can hear." Until now, I thought I'd already lost everything. My name, my daughter, my life. But I was wrong. There was more of me to steal. And they were about to attempt something unforgivable. After they found out about the second baby, I could feel a shift, not in love, not in concern. In panic. Suddenly, it wasn't enough to bury my memory. Now they needed to erase evidence, and my second daughter was just that. They treated her not like a miracle, not like a life, but like an inconvenient secret that needed to disappear. It started with whispers. Margaret, Andrew, and Jennifer were back in the hospital, standing right outside my room. And once again, the nurse forgot to turn off the baby monitor. Maybe it wasn't forgetfulness anymore. Maybe someone was rooting for me. Andrew's voice was trembling. "I didn't know there were 2, why didn't anyone tell me?" "Because you told them not to disrupt your schedule," Margaret hissed. "You told them to handle medical things quietly, and now look where that's gotten us." Jennifer's voice slid in like ice under the door. "What do we do now? 2 babies, that ruins everything." There was a long pause. Then I heard words that shook my soul. "We get rid of her." My heart rate spiked. Alarms started flashing, nurses came rushing in. But I couldn't move, I couldn't scream. All I could do was listen to the next words that followed. "Not adoption through the courts," Margaret said. "That'll take too long, we do a private transfer, quiet, discreet." "To WHO?" Andrew asked, sounding horrified but not horrified enough. "I have a friend," Margaret continued. "She and her husband can't have children, they've been desperate for a baby. They'll pay $100,000, no paperwork, no questions, cash." "You want to sell her." Andrew's voice cracked, but there was no fighting tone, just fear of being caught. "She's not your daughter anyway," Margaret snapped. "She's a loophole, a liability. If she's discovered, you lose everything, the sympathy, the clean image of the grieving husband, the insurance payout." "And Jennifer's position becomes complicated," Margaret added. Jennifer, ever the shadow, spoke quietly. "She's right, it's too messy having 2 babies, one makes sense. 2, people start asking questions." Andrew was silent. And I knew. He was considering it. That moment, those words broke something in me. I wasn't just a mother fighting from inside a coma anymore. Now I was a lioness. And somewhere, deep in the locked cage of my body, something stirred at those words. Rage. Pure. Undeniable. White-hot rage. My thoughts turned from grief to vengeance. "You're going to sell my child. You think I'm gone. Just wait." The nurses were concerned about the spike in my vitals. "Her heart rate jumped again," one said. "That's not a random reaction." "Could just be stimulus in the environment," another shrugged. But Claire, the one who had been quietly watching for days, shook her head. "No," she cried when her parents were turned away. "She spikes whenever they're around. Now this, what if she's hearing everything?" She went straight to her supervisor. "There's something going on," she insisted. "It's not reflex, it's response. We need to notify someone." Her supervisor nodded. "I think you're right. Also, did you hear what they were saying outside her room?" "Yes," Claire whispered. "They're planning to sell a baby." Her supervisor's expression went dark. "That's criminal. I'm calling social services and hospital security, right now." Meanwhile, I was still trapped. Still frozen. But something was changing. The rage wasn't just emotion anymore. It was power. It was fire, and fire brings life. That night, day 29, everything came crashing to a climax. The deadline. The day Margaret had gleefully circled on the calendar of my death. They were planning to come in the next morning, legal forms in hand, and authorize the removal of my life support. And while I lay there, alone except for the hum of machinery and the steady beep of the monitors, something snapped into place. Like a key turning inside a rusted lock. At 11:47 p.m., my right index finger twitched. Just once. Just enough. Enough for the night nurse to see. She gasped, dropped the chart she was holding, and ran out of the room screaming. She moved her hand. Within minutes, the room filled with nurses, doctors, and machines. "All right, Samantha," I heard someone say gently. "If you can hear me, try again." And I did. My fingers twitched again. My eyelids fluttered. And then, with a Herculean effort, I forced open my eyes. 2:17 a.m. After 29 days buried inside myself. I opened my eyes. Dr. Martinez was there. He leaned over, raising the bed slightly. "Samantha, can you hear me?" Blinked twice. I blinked. Twice. Then I whispered one word with all the strength I could muster. "Babies." His eyes widened. You know about the twins." I nodded. "Both," I whispered. "Where are they?" He looked at me, really looked, and saw what I needed him to see. The pain. The betrayal. The fire. I fixed my eyes on his and said something that chilled the room. "I heard everything." The moment Dr. Martinez realized I was conscious, truly, miraculously, undeniably awake, everything changed. Nurses filled the room like a wave, monitors beeped hyperactively, the night air turned electric with disbelief. Samantha Mitchell. The woman they had declared brain dead, the woman whose funeral was being faked, the woman whose baby had already been stolen, had opened her eyes. And not just opened them. Spoken. My voice was raspy. Dry like gravel in my throat. But every word that came out hit like gunfire. Dr. Martinez leaned closer. "Samantha, tell me again, what do you remember?" I blinked, my lips cracked as I spoke. "Everything," I whispered. Every word, every plan, the party, the insurance, the girlfriend, the second baby. My breath caught. The plan to sell her. Dr. Martinez's face drained of color. "You heard all of it?" he asked carefully. I nodded. I was asleep, but I wasn't blind, I wasn't deaf, I was there screaming inside, and no one heard me. He stepped back like I'd hit him. It was real. It was all real. Within 20 minutes, security was at the door. Hospital admin, a supervisor, 2 officers. And behind them, a face I hadn't seen yet. Teresa, the hospital's child welfare officer. Smart, stern, her presence crackled with urgency. "She's awake," one nurse whispered. She heard everything. Teresa turned to me, her voice like steel-soft velvet. "Samantha, my darling, you don't need to suffer silently a moment longer. Tell us what happened." And I did. Every single word. I told them about Margaret's plan to pull the plug on day 30. About Jennifer moving into my house while I was still on life support. About my daughter being renamed. The lies. The baby party. How they lied to my parents, held a fake funeral, locked them out of the hospital. How my second baby, my secret twin, was going to be sold. Halfway through my story, Teresa's eyes filled with fire. You're saying they tried to sell your child. They didn't try, they were hours away from doing it. By dawn, police reports were filed. Security video logs were pulled. And I made 2 urgent requests. 1, contact my parents. 2, bring me both of my daughters now. Around 8:00 a.m., when the sun finally climbed over the horizon like a promise I wasn't sure I'd survive to see, my parents walked into my ICU room. They stopped in the doorway, pale, trembling. My mom covered her mouth and broke into hysterical sobs. My dad staggered behind her, one shaking hand reaching for mine. "You're alive," he whispered. "My God, baby, they told us, they said you were dead." "I know," I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. "I heard Margaret lie to you. I heard you outside, screaming at the gates of our own house. I'm so sorry." My mother collapsed to her knees by my bed. I reached out and put a hand over hers. "I'm here now," I said. "I promise you I'm not going anywhere." That afternoon, my lawyer, who also happened to be my father's best friend, showed up with briefcases full of documentation. He wasn't just any lawyer. He was the kind who got things done. Turns out, while I was pregnant, I had quietly updated everything: my will, my insurance policies, my living trust, custody preferences, even installed hidden cameras in the house when I started suspecting Andrew was unfaithful. What no one knew was that I'd left nothing to chance. I might have been unconscious, but I wasn't unarmed. Everything was aligning for day 30. Margaret had arranged an appointment to legally terminate my life support that day at exactly 10:00 a.m. What she didn't know is that by 10:00 a.m., I'd be sitting fully awake, flanked by 2 police officers, a civil rights attorney, and most importantly, my 2 baby girls. Yes, both of them. They brought them to me at sunrise, one nestled in each arm, identical faces, unmoving chests rising and falling with fragile innocence. My mother laid them gently beside me. I broke. Tears came like rain that had waited too long. Hope, the name I chose long ago, was on my left. And the baby they almost erased. Grace. Because it was by grace I survived, by grace I came back. And they'd never take them from me again. At 9:57 a.m., I heard the clacking of heels outside my hospital door. Laughter. Margaret. Jennifer. Andrew. They waltzed in with coffee cups and smug smiles, holding papers in hand like my death warrant was a piece of office paperwork. They didn't even look toward the bed at first. And then Andrew glanced up and nearly dropped his coffee on his shoe. Jennifer gasped. Margaret froze in place, her smile dying on her lips. Because there I was, sitting up, wide-eyed, holding both of my daughters, and smiling. "Hi," I said coolly. "Surprised to see me." Andrew's mouth opened and closed, no words. Margaret whispered, almost in shock, "That's impossible." "No, what would have been impossible," I said, "was letting you get away with it." One of the officers stepped around the bed and addressed Andrew. "Mr. Mitchell, you're under arrest for attempted child trafficking, fraud, theft, and conspiracy to commit murder." Andrew turned white. "Margaret Mitchell," the second officer added, "you are under arrest as an accessory and co-conspirator. Jennifer Green, you're being detained for your involvement in illegal child custody fraud and as a witness to potential trafficking." Jennifer started to cry. "Please, I didn't know about the second baby, I didn't." "I did," I said, cutting her off. "And I heard you say it's cleaner this way." Margaret lunged toward me, but an officer stopped her with a firm hand. "You can't prove any of this," she hissed. Wrong again, I said calmly. I nodded toward my attorney. Security recordings, audio devices in my house, staff testimony, logs, baby monitor audio, phone records, bank statements want me to keep going. In the hallway, 5 minutes later, I could still hear Margaret shouting obscenities as they dragged her away. Jennifer sobbing hysterically. Andrew silent like the coward he truly was. May, I just held my daughters tighter. Close to heart. Close to skin. 3 months later, I walked into the courtroom wearing the same colored dress I gave birth in. White. Not for purity, no. White for rebirth. For strength. For light returning after darkness. And this time, everyone looked at me. Not as a wife. Not as a victim. But as a woman who refused to die. A mother who burned through betrayal and came back for everything they tried to steal. The trial was swift. The media picked it up as soon as the story broke. Mother awakens from coma to expose betrayal, baby theft, and insurance fraud plot. But they only knew the surface. They didn't know how it felt to be buried alive while your life was rewritten. They didn't know how long 29 days really is when you're screaming from inside your own coffin of a body. But I did. And I remembered everything. On the day of sentencing, I sat across from Andrew and I didn't see my husband. I saw the man who chose convenience over conscience, who stood by as they planned to end my life like it was an unwanted bill, who stayed silent while another woman wore my clothes and rocked my newborn, who looked at my coma-stricken body and thought, "Good, now I'm free." Not anymore. The judge's gavel shattered the silence. Andrew Mitchell, the judge read from the bench. You've been found guilty of attempted child trafficking, insurance fraud, criminal negligence, and conspiracy to commit murder. You are sentenced to 8 years in prison with no possibility of parole for 5. I didn't smile. He wasn't worth the power behind a smile. Next to him, Margaret Mitchell stood in her blue suit, stone-faced and shaking. The judge's words turned sharper. As the orchestrator of this scheme, you stand convicted of accessory to attempted murder, fraud, obstruction of justice, and child endangerment. You are sentenced to 5 years, no parole. Finally, a flicker of emotion cracked her cold mask. Realization. She lost. To the daughter-in-law she called a nobody. Not anymore. Never again. Jennifer cried through her charges: fraud, knowingly contributing to conspiracy, impersonation for custody claims. She got 3 years and a restraining order that prohibits any contact with me or my daughters for life. Through her tears, she looked at me once. I didn't know the whole plan, she whimpered. I just wanted a family. I answered with silence. I had one. She helped destroy it. The judge's final words were for me. He looked down from the bench, court silent but buzzing with invisible emotion. Mrs. Mitchell, he said gently, very few people could survive what you endured and fewer still would return with this much grace. This courtroom acknowledges your strength, your suffering, and your courage in protecting your daughters. On behalf of a broken system, I'm sorry. I nodded once. Because the truth is, I didn't come for apologies. I came for accountability. And I got it. Legally, my life was returned to me. I was granted full custody of hope and grace. Both babies' names officially changed to what I chose at birth. A permanent restraining order against Andrew, Margaret, and Jennifer, 500 FT minimum, lifetime. All insurance money placed in a legally protected trust. Ownership of our home turned over fully in my name. And perhaps most poetic of all, The very insurance policy meant to be cashed in by my death. It now funds every breath of life for my daughter's future. As for the house, I sold it. Every room inside that place was poisoned by lies. Blood money romance. Fake futures. I took every last dollar of equity and placed it straight into a college fund for hope and grace. We moved in with my parents for a while. And for once, instead of mourning me, they got to see me alive. I sleep now without nightmares. Not because the past doesn't haunt me, but because I'm no longer scared of it. I look it straight in the eye. Every single day. My daughters are almost 7 months old now. Beautiful, vibrant, dancing little lights. Hope is the curious one, Grace is more careful. They both have my eyes. They won't grow up wondering if their mother gave up. They'll know I didn't. They'll know that I fought for them. From inside the pit of silence. From under the weight of betrayal. From beyond the edge of death. Because a mother never stops fighting. Months after the trial, a publisher reached out to me. They asked if I'd consider writing a memoir. Not just about the coma, but about the fight to reclaim your life after the people you trusted most burned it to the ground. So I wrote it. Buried but not broken. It became a bestseller in 2 weeks. Now I speak around the country. In hospitals, conferences, rehab clinics, schools. About a little-known condition called locked-in syndrome and the priceless power of instinct, love, and knowing your truth even when no one else believes in it. Some days I still walk through the park where I first took hope and grace after coming home. It's peaceful there. Healing. I sit on a bench with my journal and watch them toddle after butterflies in their matching dresses, yellow ones my mother made. Their giggles float through the breeze, pure and untouched by the trauma they were born into. And I remind myself, I made it. They tried to make a memory out of me. But I'm not a memory. I'm a mother. I'm a survivor. I'm a storm in skin form. They buried me. But what they didn't know is, you don't bury women like me. You plant us. And when we rise, we come back stronger.